Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Across the South. And since it is the time of giving, the season of giving, I'm going to give you a lot of information based off the Heisman results, the new 2026 SEC football schedule that's been released, as well as a look inside of basketball before we get into the SEC conference schedule. All of that's coming up right here on Across the South. All right, so we're going to jump right into it with the SEC schedule release for the 2026 season. As I've stated in multiple episodes, the schedule's been changed to where it's now 9 conference games with at least one Power 4 or Notre Dame compared opponent. So I've got way too much information on it. I had to write it down, so it's all in my notebook versus just being on my notes in my computer. But we're going to get right into it, going in alphabetical order, starting off with Alabama. Now, their earliest start in conference play comes next year. They'll actually open up week 2 at Kentucky. So that's the earliest that Alabama has ever played an SEC opponent in, I can't say ever, but it's been a very long time. I think since like 2008, since Alabama has opened up that early with conference play. Now, week 3 after Kentucky, they have their Power 4 opponent in Florida State. So hopefully it's better than this year's week 1 performance against Florida State. You know, they'll have Eastern Carolina week 1, then Kentucky to kind of build into that Florida State game. Their toughest stretch, though, is that week 3, and then it goes all the way into week 8. So Florida State, South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and then it's Georgia, at Tennessee, Texas A&M before they go into the bye week. The back half of their schedule after that bye week's not too bad, at LSU, at Vandy, and then, of course, the Iron Bowl to finish everything off. Then going to Arkansas, their toughest stretch kind of comes early with week 2 at Utah, who's going to be their Power 4 opponent. And then it's Georgia, Tulsa, so an out-of-conference there, at Texas A&M, Tennessee, and then at Vanderbilt. And the last time they played Vanderbilt was in 2018, and Vanderbilt actually came out on top in that game. I think it was 41-38 or something like that. But that's the last time that Arkansas played Vanderbilt. And then some major news, what I've been harping on for so long, they're finally bringing back the Battle of the Boot for Black Friday weekend. So finally, it's no longer against Missouri for the Battle Line rivalry. The battle for the boot will be the final game of the regular season between Arkansas and LSU. Thank you. I've been wanting that. We've got it. That's going to be so much better than LSU and Oklahoma, and then the Arkansas-Missouri game. This is just, it's tradition. It's SEC tradition. It's always been that way. We're going to keep it that way, and we're bringing it back. Then we have Auburn. Week 1, they're playing Baylor in Atlanta. That's their Power 4 opponent there. Their toughest stretch comes after the bye week. So in week 7, so their bye week is on October 10th. And then it's at Georgia, LSU, at Ole Miss, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, Samford. They're out of conference right before the Iron Bowl at Alabama. So after that bye week, it's alternating between road games and home games. The first half, all home except for at Tennessee right before the bye week. But other than that, all home games. After that bye week, alternating home and away, home and away. Florida, week 3 at Auburn, opening up conference play. They kind of go with that alternating home and away throughout the season a little bit. Week 9 after the bye week will be against Georgia at Atlanta, or in Atlanta, I should say. Then you have Oklahoma, at Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and then at Florida State for their rivalry, as well as their Power 4 opponent. Then we have Georgia. This year, there's no Tennessee. Georgia will not play Tennessee this year. But week 4 through week 7, they have Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, at Alabama, then Auburn. They hit their bye week on October 24th, and they'll finish up the season with Florida in Atlanta no, they'll finish with Georgia Tech, their Power 4, the rivalry there between Georgia and Georgia Tech. Kentucky, throughout the season, it pretty much is home and away, home and away. They go road game, home game, pretty much the whole season, similar to Florida. Starting November 7th, they've got at Tennessee, then Florida, and then at Missouri. And then come the final week, they'll play Louisville for the Governor's Cup rivalry in that final week of the regular season. LSU, a lot to cover here. So starting off, first game, week 1, is against Clemson. That's their Power 4 opponent for this year. And then week 3, mark this one down, is at Ole Miss. If you've followed along with all of the Lane Kiffin information, the back and forth between Ole Miss and LSU, it's kind of become a new rivalry now. And opening up SEC play in week 3 going against your former team is something. And a little note, because it seems like we have Oxford, Louisiana, and Baton Rouge, Mississippi. Frank Williams, who's the interim head coach after Brian Kelly got fired at LSU, is in talks to being hired on as assistant head coach at Ole Miss, which there have been transfers going both ways from LSU to Ole Miss, from Ole Miss to LSU. So it's going to be interesting, that week 3 game. After that, it's Texas A&M, and then into November, LSU goes Alabama, Texas, at Tennessee, at Arkansas. So not an easy start or finish for LSU. Kind of that October month, that month of October is going to be their easier games. It's where they're going to really start to figure out where their problems are. But early in the season and then later in the season are going to be some tough matches for LSU. Then we go Ole Miss, starting off on either September 5th or 6th. The date hasn't been decided yet, but they will play Louisville in Nashville for their Power 4 opponent. And then starting October 10th through the rest of the month, they go at Vandy, Mizzou, at Texas, Auburn. So some tough competition there for Ole Miss, especially when this is going to be their first full year under Pete Golding as the head coach. Then we have Mississippi State starting on September 12th. They will go and face their Power 4 opponent in Minnesota. So Mississippi State going way up north to Minnesota for their early week Power 4 competition. They have a bye week on October 10th, and then following, it's at LSU, Oklahoma, at Texas, Vanderbilt, then Auburn. So Mississippi State, they looked better this year. They definitely had some improvement. It's still going to be tough with these 9 conference games, as well as going to Minnesota, who's in the Big Ten. They finished middle of the pack. Nothing to sneeze at. You're going to be playing on the road in a cold environment, something that they may not be used to. It does get cold in Mississippi, but it's probably going to be a little bit, it'll be early September, so not too cold, but still cold. Then we go to Missouri, starting off week 2 at Kansas for their rivalry with their Power 4 opponent. And then Missouri's last game of the season, so rather than being Arkansas, it's actually going to be Oklahoma. And so Oklahoma and Missouri will play in the rivalry week, which I think is much better geographically. They're side by side. So that's what always made sense to me whenever it came to including Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC 2 years ago or 3 years ago, was to make Missouri play Oklahoma rather than Oklahoma playing LSU. None of that made sense. The travel, it's easier for Missouri to go to Oklahoma, Oklahoma go to Missouri. So I like that move there. Oklahoma's next. Week 2, they've got a big competition at Michigan for their Power 4 opponent. I say big. There's still allegations going around of what all Sharon Moore did as the Michigan head coach. I won't get too much in depth there, but Michigan's a mess. Who knows what's going to happen? Week 5, they go into their bye week, so it's an early bye week. That happens the first weekend of October on the 3rd. And then on the 10th, they will play Texas in Dallas for the Red River rivalry. Then we have South Carolina. Their bye week is starting October 17th. Then after that, a major list of opponents with Tennessee at Oklahoma, Texas A&M at Arkansas, Georgia at Clemson to finish it off for their Power 4 opponent. Tennessee week 2 at Georgia Tech for their Power 4 opponent. Then you go week 4, Texas, Auburn at Arkansas, Alabama at South Carolina, and then they get their bye week on the 31st. So a big stretch there for Tennessee in their early first half of their schedule before that bye week. Texas week 2. Similar to Oklahoma facing Michigan, Texas will come back and play Ohio State again this year, but it'll be the second week, not the first. They won't be the season opener. And then same as Oklahoma, they have their bye week on the 3rd of October, so an early bye week, and then come back for that game in Dallas. Texas A&M week 2 facing Arizona State for their Power 4, going against the Sun Devils. And then after their bye week on October 31st, it's at South Carolina, Tennessee, at Oklahoma, which will be at Oklahoma, and then Texas. Excuse me, I'm still dealing with that cough and head cold. Then Texas will be on the Friday of it'll be a Black Friday game on November 27th, not the Saturday of November 28th. Lastly, rounding it all off, we have Vanderbilt coming in starting week 3 is NC State. They put all of their out-of-conference opponents at the beginning. So I know Delaware's week 2, can't remember week 1. And then week 3 is North Carolina State for their Power 4 opponent. And then through week 8, it goes at Auburn, at Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, at Kentucky. So a tough little stretch there for Vanderbilt as well. But I'm really excited to see what all this new schedule brings. We get 9 conference games, which is nice. We have the mandatory Power 4 out-of-conference game that we must do, which if you noticed, I rattled off a lot of things, but if you look at strictly just the Power 4 opponents, because it is a Power 4 / Notre Dame game, no one scheduled Notre Dame. So it seems like the freeze out that I mentioned last episode is happening. And Notre Dame's kind of got a chip on their shoulder, like, hey, you're showing that you're scared to play us, that you don't want to play us because it ruins your chances. That's one way to look at it. That's the Notre Dame way of looking at it, like, oh, they're scared. They don't want to play us because we're too good. Again, bringing up what I said last week. Anytime Notre Dame has faced an SEC opponent outside of Arkansas this year, they've lost. Texas A&M barely beat them, but still beat them whenever they've played Alabama in the playoffs. You know, this sort of repetitiveness, it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see who all Notre Dame schedules to really make their case for the College Football Playoff Committee, even though that MOU has now been completely made. Like, it's like going over to your friend's house and you're playing a game and they decide to make the rules because they make new rules because you're winning. That's what Notre Dame's doing. But I've already talked about all of that and I don't want to talk about it anymore. Transitioning from the new schedule, which I like to see, as well as because you're going to get matchups that you haven't seen before. Since 2018, Arkansas hasn't played Vanderbilt. That's a new one. I can't remember the last time Arkansas played South Carolina. You know, it's a rotating schedule outside of 3 continuous opponents. That's in another episode. If you haven't watched that one, I don't remember which one it was, but I went over all that of who the 3 consistent opponents would be for each SEC team. And then everyone else is rotating. So whoever plays this year, they'll play someone different next year or at a different time, something of that sort. But I like the layout. I like the scheduling that's happened. I like the teams that have been scheduled. I really like the fact that LSU and Arkansas play at the very end of the season because that's just, it's a rivalry. It's rivalry week. That's what you do. Do I think they could move Texas and Oklahoma to that final week? Probably the same way they could move Missouri and Kansas to that final week. But the early season, mid-season rivalry, I guess, has always been the tradition between those 4 teams. So who knows? But I think it's going to be really interesting. There's going to be a lot of games that you'll want to tune into. It's not just, I'm going to watch my team this week. It's like, oh, here's this game, this game, this game, and this game. And I'm going to have 4 TVs set up in front of me, as well as my laptop streaming so many different games to figure out what to talk about come the 2026 season. Okay, but now I'm officially moving on. I want to talk about the Heisman because I made my cases about like for Diego Pavia. I gave him the benefit of winning. I went through all the stats. I thought he was the clear winner, but instead it went to Fernando Mendoza of Indiana. If you hear some moving around, I have 2 guests in the quote-unquote studio with me today. One's on the bed, one's on the floor. My furry friends, Moose and Denver. So if you hear any noises barking, it's them. But back to the Heisman. I told you that it was a popularity contest, and that pretty much came to fruition because Indiana beat Ohio State. Fernando Mendoza was the quarterback of Indiana, so his win percentage increased drastically. I don't see how you can make that decision when this is the supposed to be greatest all-around player of college football, and he has not the best stats. I mean, you look at Diego Pavia, who is a 2-star recruit, transferred out of New Mexico State, went to a team that has not been successful in Vanderbilt, and then leads them to their first 10-win season. There's your story. There's your hey, that's a player. That guy came in with a chip on his shoulder, and he showed why everyone who didn't pick him was wrong. Why no one picked him up. Clark Lee took the chance, got his guy. And I mean, that's your story. He went from New Mexico to Vanderbilt, beat Alabama his first year at Vanderbilt, and then the following year goes on a 10-win season. There's your story. How you go from 0 to hero in Diego Pavia, from New Mexico State 2-star recruit to a Heisman winner. If you're looking at it like that from a journalistic point of view, then Diego Pavia is your winner. I mean, if you look at the past SEC quarterbacks with 3,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards in a season, which Diego Pavia did, go back to Tim Tebow, 2007, won the Heisman. Johnny Manziel in 2012, won the Heisman. Dak Prescott lost to Marcus Mariota. Jaden Daniels in 2023 won the Heisman, and then Diego Pavia, who lost. But I wanted to pull up because Dak Prescott did it, but he lost to Marcus Mariota, the same way that Diego Pavia lost to Fernando Mendoza. So let's break down the stats. We're going to go between Mariota and Mendoza here. So when Mariota was playing at Oregon, here are his stats. 3,783 passing yards. Fernando Mendoza didn't break 3,000. 38 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions throughout the entire year. He had 669 rushing yards for 14 touchdowns. 53 total touchdowns, tied for most in the history of a Heisman winner. He led the nation in touchdowns, passing efficiency with 186.33, and total offense with 4,452 yards. That makes sense. For Marcus Mariota to win the Heisman, that makes sense. If you look at all of those stats that I just read out, that makes sense as to why Dak Prescott didn't win the Heisman. Let's look at Mendoza. He went 226 for 316 total of passes, 2,980 passing yards. So again, didn't break 3,000 passing yards. He finished 25th in the nation in that category. Passing yards alone, he finished 25th. But he's a Heisman winner. Now, he did lead the nation with 33 touchdown passes. He had 240 rushing yards for 6 touchdowns, for 6 scores. He was second nationally in touchdowns with 39. I think Diego Pavia had 36. So a 3 more touchdowns. That's where I'm trying to get. He was second in QBR with 181.39, and he was 6th in completion percentage with 71.5%. Where in that says leader, Heisman winner? It doesn't. You have the 25th and the 6th and then second. Where does that say first? in any category. It doesn't. He beat Ohio State and went undefeated. Here's your Heisman winner. That's what the consensus was. That's how the voting happened. I mean, you look at last year with Cam Ward in Miami. Cam Ward was threw for 4,300 yards, 39 touchdowns, and he finished fourth in the Heisman race. Broke 4,000 yards, has more touchdowns at 39 touchdowns than Mendoza, and he didn't even get bronze. But here's Fernando Mendoza with 2,900 yards and 33 touchdowns as the unanimous winner. There was like a first place voting difference of 400 between Mendoza and Pavia for first place. I think Mendoza had like 600 plus first place votes, and the most that Pavia got was 100 plus. I mean, that's significant comparing those, what I just read. I even went further because he finished second in QBR and sixth in completion percentage. So let's go ahead and break down QBR ratings over everything. So Jaden Maeva out of USC finished number one at 91.3. Julian Sayin, Ohio State, was also a candidate for the Heisman, finished second at 89.8. Fernando Mendoza, 88.5. Then Diego Pavia at 87.7. So, I mean, just a smudge better than Diego Pavia. Okay. Completion percentage. Julian Sayin leads off 78.4%. Carson Beck of Miami, 74.7%. Dante Moore of Oregon, 72.5%. Haynes King at Georgia Tech, 71.7%. Then Fernando Mendoza at 71.5%, so just a little under Georgia Tech. And then Diego Pavia, 71.2%. So a 0.3% difference in completion percentage between Fernando Mendoza and Diego Pavia. Explain to me how he had 600 plus first place votes for the Heisman. Because he beat Ohio State and went undefeated. That's the only argument. That's it. Now, you could talk about Diego Pavia's character. I mean, I don't agree with him being like, F all the haters. That's uncalled for and unnecessary. Do I think that he had the best role model with going under the wing of Johnny Manziel? No. But I understand the frustration. He came out and he apologized like, hey, that's not me. That was a bad choice of character. He's a competitor. He's shown it through last season and this season. You know, I'm a 2-star recruit. I transferred. I'm one of the best quarterbacks. You just need to have me on your team, and I'll prove it. What does Clark Lee do? Man, we're struggling. I'm going to get this guy. He competed at New Mexico State, beat Auburn when they were really good. He's a competitor. I want him. I want competitors on my team. What happens? 10-2. So yeah, you get frustrated when you compete. That's a con of competition, I guess. Like, that's just something that comes with it, is you get emotional, especially when this is your passion, when you've played it from 4th grade all the way through college for 4 years, like from age 6 until you're 18. No, not even 18, 22. That's a long time of playing one sport for just 3 months out of a year. So yeah, you're competitive, you compete, you're passionate about it. He's gone out there and shown that he is the best quarterback, in my opinion. And it could be multiple people's opinion, but to me, he's shown that he was the unanimous winner for the Heisman, in my opinion. Now, he got second, which is great, but a 400 vote differential is too much. I could understand if Fernando Mendoza squeaked it out if it was 396 to 375 in votes. But I just don't see how you can make that choice. And it's simply based on the fact that Indiana beat Ohio State and went undefeated. And I think that's just the consensus of, if you're on a team that goes undefeated, then because you're undefeated, you played a part in that and you must be the best, rather than strictly basing it off of stats because that's how it should be. I mean, Diego Pavia did what he did in the SEC. Go ahead and look at Indiana's schedule and look who they played, and the fact that Fernando Mendoza couldn't get over 3,000 passing yards. I mean, come on. 3,000 plus passing yards and 800 rushing yards in the SEC. The last one to do it was Jaden Daniels at LSU, and that was in 2023. It's rare. And before that, it was Dak Prescott, and that was, 2014? Yeah, 2014. It's rare for someone to be able to do that within the SEC, and Diego Pavia did it, as well as many other stats. And you lead a team that was bottom of the totem pole in the SEC to a top dog to almost get into the college football playoffs. I mean, I think if Vanderbilt did get in the college football playoffs, he probably would have gotten a better benefit of the doubt, probably would have gotten more votes, but because they didn't go undefeated, Fernando Mendoza gets to be your winner. I mean, we'll see how it gets to perform come the college football playoffs, which begins this weekend on Friday with Alabama and Oklahoma, and then you've got your next quarterfinal games on the 20th. And ESPN was actually very gracious. They put out their predictions for the college football playoffs and how that would play out. So I want to break them down because I think it'll be fun. So like I said, Friday, you have Alabama at Oklahoma. For the first round, you do get home field advantages. After that, you play your bowl games on neutral sites. I don't think they should be bowl games, but whatever. I don't make the choices. So ESPN predicting the game final, Alabama at Oklahoma, 20-17 Alabama. It is worth noting that Alabama has not lost to the same opponent twice in the same season since 1893. I don't even know the math on how many years it's been. But that just goes to show the dynasty and the dynamicness of Alabama. Now, Oklahoma has beaten Alabama twice between last year and this year, but not in the same season. Could that happen? Yes. Because they're playing in Oklahoma and because of how Alabama performed in the SEC championship, yes. It could be the first time that Alabama loses to the same opponent twice in the same season. Do I think it'll be 20-17? Yes. Do I think Alabama's going to win? I'm going like 52-49. That's not the math. 52-48 Oklahoma. I think that's where I'm sitting right now, percentage-wise, on win predictability. Then you have, these are going to be on Saturday, number 10 Miami at number 7 Texas A&M. ESPN has predicted a 31-28 final in favor of Miami. I think this will be a close game, like the 31-28. It will be a close game, but I'm going to give my benefit to Texas A&M. I think they've got a stronger defense. Their offense didn't look the best against Texas. That was their only fall apart, was against Texas. But, when you watch week 2 against Notre Dame, that's early in the season. They have the grit and the grind to get things done, especially late in a game. You saw the 28 or 21-28 point comeback in a single half against South Carolina. So they have an efficient offense as well as being paired with their dynamic defense. It will be a close game, but I'm going to put my favor into Texas A&M. I just don't see Miami being that dynamic against Texas A&M. They could surprise me. They could shock me. But I'm going to say Texas A&M wins that one. Number 11, Tulane at number 6, Ole Miss. I'm predicting Ole Miss to win. Same thing with ESPN, but it's 16-34. That's a pretty big point differential, especially with it being Pete Golding's first game as the head coach. Now, they do get their offensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin, was gracious enough to provide that to Ole Miss, that the offensive coordinator could come back and coach for Ole Miss. Just Lane Kiffin will not be in attendance. Do I think 16-34? No, I'm thinking 21-14, maybe even a little bit closer, 21-17, something of the sort. I don't think it's going to be that much. I don't think it'll be a 2-score difference for the final. Lastly, number 12, James Madison at number 5, Oregon, with Oregon winning 13-38. That one seems a little bit more believable. Oregon's just a big powerhouse. They have a very efficient offense, especially with offensive coordinator Will Stein, who is now taking over at Kentucky. So he'll get to finish his part in the college football playoffs, and then he'll go and make his rounds at Kentucky. But I do believe that Oregon will move on in those regards. So moving to the quarterfinal, where you'll now have your 1-4 seeds since they have a bye. Number 2, Ohio State, predicted through ESPN to face number 10 Miami. I would say that they would go against Texas A&M. But ESPN is saying a 27-20 final. So they're thinking Ohio State's going to win by at least a touchdown. I would have Ohio State winning against either Miami or Texas A&M in this quarterfinal. So I agree with them there. If it was Texas A&M, do I think it'd be 27-20? Yeah, I could see that. It might be a little bit closer. You could put it within 3 points, but consensus is Ohio State would win that game. Then you have number 4 Texas Tech versus number 5 Oregon, and they ESPN predicted that Texas Tech would win 23-20. I would flip it, and I would say 20-23 in favor of Oregon. Texas Tech looks good. They've looked good all season. Very good offense. It'll be an interesting game. It'll be a good game to watch nonetheless. I don't really know how to break it down. I haven't watched either of these teams. I watched a little bit of Texas Tech in their conference championship against BYU, and they looked really good. They've got speedy wide receivers. They've got a great quarterback. They've proven why they're number 4 in the nation and why they get this number 4 seed. But I would give Oregon a little bit of a benefit there. I would. Then you have number 1 Indiana going against number 9 Alabama, because they have Alabama predicted to win over Oklahoma. You could say Indiana against Oklahoma as well with my prediction. They have it set at 24-16 Indiana. No. Whether Alabama or Oklahoma, still no. I don't see Indiana going against defenses like that, going against high caliber offenses in either Alabama or Oklahoma. Oklahoma is very speedy on the outside with their wide receivers. Great offensive coordinator plays. You saw what they did against Auburn. Yes, some of them were cheap, but if John Mateer is healthy, he could do it. But with everything that I've seen out of Fernando Mendoza, I just don't think that their offense is going to be capable of going against an SEC defense. I don't think it would happen. Like, you could say that Indiana is Notre Dame in this instance. Anytime you play these lesser opponents, and I'm not trying to sound rude, but like you're just not going against the competition of the SEC, and everything looks great on paper because it's like, wow, you're 13-0, and it's like, yeah, but you played until towards the end of the season, but you played like the bottom half of your own conference, kind of like Texas A&M did. They went undefeated. They almost went undefeated, but they made a good run. But once they faced a team that was over 500, they lost. I think Indiana's going to have the same outcome in the playoffs. Now, they have some time to rest and really work on their offense. They could be studying both Alabama and Oklahoma just to go ahead and have both teams on tape. But until this first round is over, they're not going to know who they face, and they really can't prep for that. Whereas these teams can go ahead and, well, I'd say go ahead. They still have to have their first round. But regardless, I don't see Indiana winning, whether it is Alabama or Oklahoma. Last game, number 3 Georgia versus number 6 Ole Miss, 31-21 favor of Georgia. I agree with that. Ole Miss could surprise. I will say it's floating around that Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback for Ole Miss, who has been starting since week 3. No, not week 3, week 2. I don't know. Early season. He is considering sitting out the college football playoffs. So there's also that little sprinkle of chaos in the Ole Miss locker room. Austin Simmons would come in, who hasn't seen the field since Trinidad Chambliss has taken over. Went out with an ankle injury, played a little bit in the game against Arkansas, but really hasn't been a part of the Ole Miss offense. Now, he's still a good quarterback, but when you sit for that long and you've kind of had your offensive scheme being based around Trinidad, it might be a little tricky for Austin Simmons to come in and take Ole Miss to where they need to be in order to progress through the college football playoffs. But I would have Georgia winning that game as well. Into the semifinals would be number 2 Ohio State versus number 3 Georgia, in favor of Ohio State, 19-16. I agree with the score, and I kind of agree with the outcome a little bit. Ohio State has a great team. They've always had a great team. They perform well in the college football playoffs. But the way that Georgia played Alabama in the SEC championship, they were dominant. I mean, if they were able to shut down Alabama's run game, they could do the same with Ohio State. And then all you have to focus on is the pass game. And they're really good in that regard as well. Good readings on defense with their safeties and corners. They've got heavy hitting linebackers, and their D-line is very dominant and is able to put pressure on the quarterback. If Georgia can do that, if they can get through the line and put pressure on Julian Sand, then Georgia would come out on top. But if their defense completely falls apart, or they're unable to just kind of consistently move down the field and get scores, and you don't want to take 3, but take 3 when you can, score a touchdown at all cost, then Georgia could definitely beat Ohio State. Then you have the ESPN prediction of Indiana versus Texas Tech. I would have it as either Alabama, Oklahoma versus Oregon. Could be wrong, but if you look at the semifinal, it's number 2 seed versus number 3 seed, number 1 seed versus number 4 seed. So they're basically saying everyone with a bye week is going to get through to the semifinals. There's no chance of a first round team making it to the semis. I think you're wrong. There are teams that could make it. But Indiana versus Texas Tech, 20-17. Between Ohio State, Georgia, both the semifinal games are a difference of 3 points, with Indiana scoring 1 point more. Take that as you will. I don't really know. It seems like Ohio State and Georgia is going to be nothing but field goals. Indiana and Texas Tech, you get a couple touchdowns and then field goals. So I don't think that'd be the case. I'd say Indiana would win if this comes out to be the way it plays out with Indiana versus Texas Tech. I still think it would be Alabama, Oklahoma versus Oregon. So I don't know. I think Georgia's got one of the better ways of making it into the finals. Yes, they will have to play Ohio State, but like I've described, I think Georgia will be able to put a lot of pressure on Ohio State. And then for the final, ESPN has predicted number 2 Ohio State versus number 1 Indiana with a 24-20 back-to-back Ohio State champion. I don't think it'll be that. Ohio State could reach the finals, yes, Do I want it to be Indiana? No, if you did, I watched the Big Ten Conference Championship, and that game was boring. And if that's the case here, you have the Big Ten repeat, and no one in the nation is going to want to watch that. I mean, you see how bored people got with Georgia and Alabama going back to back to back to back to back to back, being opponents in the national championship. No one wants same conference competing for the national champion, because who's going to watch that? Just the people who are fans of that conference, or just people who are fans of those two teams. But if you would get like Ohio State versus Oregon, or Georgia versus Texas Tech, like, people would watch those games because it's more interesting, and you don't have your SEC versus SEC or Big Ten versus Big Ten. You'd have Big Ten versus SEC, which is a rivalry of conferences. You'd have Pac-12 or Big 12 versus Big Ten, some sort of variety. And I think that needs to be, if you're going to continue on with having a committee to select who these teams are going to be in the college football playoff, that needs to be an aspect. You need versatility in games being played, because you have Alabama and Oklahoma who have already played this season, and they're going to play again in the college football playoffs. When Alabama should be out and BYU be in, then you have some versatility, and you have BYU versus Oklahoma. That's going to get you viewership. That's going to get you numbers. Denver's smacking the camera, so if you're watching the video, I'm sorry for the shake. I didn't have an earthquake. Excuse me. But like, just having, that's what the playoffs are for. Why do you think so many people tune into March Madness? Because there's teams who've never played each other, and it's different conferences. You have your Cinderella stories, and then like, there's so many things that go into telling a story. And whenever you make your sequel the same as the first book, and then you make your third book the same as the first book, people get tired of reading. People get tired of watching the same remade movies over and over. That's why sequels don't do good in movies. And you're like, why the heck are they making another one of these? Like when they remade Jumanji. Why? Because they've run out of ideas. It seems like the NCAA college football playoffs have run out of ideas. They're like, oh, we need big names, and we need a certain number of this conference and a certain number of this conference, but we want these two teams to be, because they're the most star power, star-studded, get the most views during the regular season. We want them to come together in the finals, because then you take those views from the regular season for each team and put them together, and it makes all this one giant nation watching game. And that's not what happens. People turn it off at that point. That's why, like with the Super Bowl, how many times are people tired of seeing the Chiefs? This would be the year to get the stats, because it's going to tell you, since the Chiefs didn't even make the playoffs, whether the Eagles make the Super Bowl or not. If there are two different teams that don't include the Chiefs or the Eagles, how much of a difference is it in viewership from last year to this year? That's the stat to watch. That's the stat I would watch. And then I would present that to the college football committee and say, here you go, quit repeating the same story. Set it up. You control the seeding. You have teams that vote. Now, I'm not saying screw over a team, but you could find a way to place seedings to make a good story, a good plot line. Something. Going on a lot of rants today, and I shouldn't be, because it's almost Christmas. I'm in the festive mood. Can't you tell? Got a Santa hat on. I even matched it green and red for Christmas colors. Okay. We're going to look at basketball now. Calming down a little bit. I got Moose's Frito paws calming me down. You're cute, dude. You're real cute. You're very handsome. So SEC basketball. So the way I'm going to do this, I have a table set up. I'm going to list the teams. That is the current order of the SEC standings from first to last. I know there haven't been any conference games. Those are coming up. But as far as records and where they rank within the SEC as of right now. So you have Vanderbilt at number 1 in the SEC with an 11-0 record, which is crazy. But you look at the opponents they're playing, not very strong out-of-conference opponents. But they are 11-0. Good for Vandy. Then you have Georgia with a 9-1 record. LSU in third, same record as Georgia, 9-1. Missouri 10-2. So they've had the most games out of all the teams played so far, but being ranked fourth within the SEC. After that, you have Arkansas at 9-2, and something that's that Arkansas is doing that's very interesting this year is they're the first ever NCAA basketball team to face the previous Elite Eight from the NCAA tournament. So they've already played Michigan State. They lost 69-66. They played Duke and lost 80-71. They played Texas Tech, who they lost to in the Sweet 16 and beat them 93-86. They face Houston, who's ranked number 1, I believe, this weekend on the 20th. And then it'll be Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, and Florida on the January 3rd, January 10th, February 17th, and February 28th. So there's a storyline to look out for to see how well Arkansas does against the previous Elite Eight, which has never been done. Right now they're sitting at 1-2. We'll find out after this weekend if they win or lose against Houston. It'd be a really big win if they did. Then you have Alabama after that at 8-3, and then everyone who I'm about to name also has an 8-3 record. It goes Auburn, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas A&M. Then you get to Texas with an 8-4 record. Then Florida with a 7-4 record, who was last year's national champion. Then you have Kentucky at 7-4, who have kind of been struggling as of right now with their out of conference opponents being 7-4. Ole Miss, South Carolina also at 7-4, and then Mississippi State at the bottom at 6-5. Now, out of all those teams, here's who all is ranked within the AP top 25. Vanderbilt, number 13. Georgia's at number 25. Arkansas at 14. Alabama, 16. Auburn is ranked 21st. Tennessee is ranked 20th. And then Florida is tied, I believe, with Virginia at number 23. Now, I say all of this because there's still so many games left to be played, especially when we're going to be getting into conference play here really, really soon, starting in January. You still have basically the remaining strength of schedule for all 16 of these teams. So again, starting from the top and then going through all 16, just saying where their remaining strength of schedule ranks. So Vanderbilt currently has the second ranked remaining strength of schedule. So they're 11-0 right now, but they still, again, they have a very tough road ahead of them to try to stay undefeated. Georgia is 53rd, so they'll get quite a few more wins. LSU 48th, they'll get some more wins. Missouri has the number 1 ranked remaining strength of schedule. So they're already sitting 10-2. It's going to be really tough, especially for the remainder of the year for Missouri. Arkansas has the 7th rank, Alabama 6th, Auburn 3rd. So even though they're 8-3, ranked number 21st, or ranked number 21, however you want me to say it, they have a really tough road ahead of them, especially with Stephen Pearl first time being the head coach after his father retired. Oklahoma 63rd, Tennessee 19th, Texas A&M 26th, Texas 28th, Florida 44th, so they might get a little bit better from this 7-4 record. Kentucky 7-4 is 5th ranked remaining strength of schedule. So if they're not doing good now, it's going to be tough for them to do good later on. Ole Miss 21st, South Carolina 13th, and Mississippi State 17th. And I went ahead and found the percentage to win the conference for the SEC. So like I said, Florida has the 44th ranked strength of schedule for the remainder of the season. They still have a 38.2% chance to win the SEC. So right now they're the favorite. Alabama's in second with 21.3%. I could see that. Vanderbilt, 19.7%. Kentucky, 19.4%, even though they're not doing great right now. Tennessee with a 14.5%. And then everyone else has less than 10% to win the SEC. So that's pretty much your race according to ESPN Analytics. It's Florida, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Tennessee as the teams who are going to go on and win the SEC. I think there's a lot of contenders. I think Auburn is a contender to win the SEC. I think Arkansas is a contender to win the SEC. Kentucky and Florida sitting at the bottom right now. They're really going to have to do well within the conference to play. Tennessee could win the SEC. They're sitting 8-3. Alabama could win. Missouri could shock everyone, especially with them having a remaining strength of schedule at the number one remaining strength of schedule. Vanderbilt could make a run in the regular season as well as the SEC tournament. So there's a lot going around. There's a lot of variables about who could truly win the SEC in basketball. And the only team that's in the upper half right now, according to the ranks, is Alabama. Well, Alabama and Tennessee, they both have an 8-3 record. And then, that's just out of the people they've picked. Or Vanderbilt, who's 11-0. But as far as Kentucky and Florida, they're sitting 7-4. So they're not that far behind, but I don't know. It's always difficult to judge early on in the season because you have to look at the opponents that the teams are playing, and then everything is tougher in the SEC. It always is. No matter where you go, the environment's different. It's louder. Now, I will say Big Ten and ACC have some good environments. With Duke, Michigan State, Louisville, they have great environments surrounding basketball. But Big Blue Nation in Kentucky at Rupp Arena. Auburn has really grown in the basketball crowd. Same with Alabama. You have Bud Walton in Arkansas. So the environment plays a lot in it too. When you have that fan base, it's so much different than football because one, you're enclosed, you're in an arena, so it's so much louder. You have voices echoing off walls, and just the momentum shift that happens goes so much quicker in basketball than it does in football, where it's you get a turnover and then you need to score in order for the momentum to carry. Whereas in basketball, it can be a turnover to a dunk to a 3-pointer to a 7-0 run in the last minute and 30 seconds to scoreless for the last 2.5 minutes, to really show off the defense and the offense. And it happens so fast. And the only way you can slow down that momentum is with a timeout. And depending on the timeout, you either get 30 seconds or you get a TV timeout of 2.5 minutes. And that's not a lot of time to go out there and shift the momentum because they're still in that killer mentality of like, I'm coming for you, try to stop me. And that's what's so entertaining about basketball. I don't know a lot. I don't know players or anything of that sort. I don't watch it a lot, but I will watch college basketball because it's so entertaining and so much fun to watch. It is. I mean, I'm ready for March. I'm ready for a lot of these games to be played. I'm ready for the regular season. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, there's just there's so much that goes into basketball, and just how much enthusiasm the fans get into it, and that it happens all across the nation. Whether you're in the arena or you're watching on your TV, you're more than likely screaming 24/7. I'd say 24/7, but for more consistently than you would be during a football game. You kind of get those breaks in between of like setting up the chains or a timeout or waiting for the play to be called. Like, okay, I got 30 seconds until the ball snapped. I can sit and be quiet and be like, oh man, why'd you do that? I'm sure in basketball, you're like, what are we doing? That's a foul. That's a tech. That's a charge. Ref, are you blind? Like, there's so much emotion that goes into basketball, and it makes it so entertaining. But we're going to go to the last segment, and that is the Scripture Spotlight. So doing something a little different, because it is the season. I'm not going to be doing a episode next week, since it will be Christmas, but I would like to share for my Scripture Spotlight. I'm going to do Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 14. And if anything sounds familiar while I'm reading this is Linus from Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown, whenever he's on the stage with his security blanket. And then Charlie Brown's asking, can anyone tell me what Christmas is about? This is it. It's right here. Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 14. And it says, that night there were shepherds staying in the fields nearby, guarding their flocks of sheep. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared among them, and the radiance of the Lord's glory surrounded them. They were terrified, but the angel reassured them. Don't be afraid, he said. I bring you good news that will bring great joy to all people. The Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord, has been born today in Bethlehem, the city of David. And you will recognize him by this sign. You will find a baby wrapped snugly in strips of cloth, lying in a manger. Suddenly, the angel was joined by a vast host of others, the armies of heaven, praising God and saying, Glory to God in highest heaven, and peace on earth to those with whom God is pleased. That's one of my favorite scenes. It's one of my mother's favorite scenes. It's just a true classic Christmas, I guess, movie in a sense, Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown. And that is the one scene that always sticks out. And that is what Christmas is all about. Yes, you get gifts, you get presents, you get to spend time with family who may live in different states. But the true reason of Christmas is the birth of Christ, our Lord and Savior, who, if he was not born onto that day, and the wise men were not told, and the prophecies before him, if none of it came to fruition, then we would be doomed to hell for all of our sins. But because of his birth and because of his sacrifice, all of those are washed away to where we can still enjoy the world, the earthly things, but as well as get to experience the spiritual ones. So thank you all for listening for this final episode of 2025 for Across the South. I'm taking the week off for Christmas. Enjoy time with your families and your friends. Enjoy the Christmas holidays, and I'll see you all in 2026.